And we will need to be interrupted. I'll need to interrupt you for when the Secretary of State comes. So welcome everybody here today. I would like to just say a special welcome because Lionel's family have come to the board meeting today, and later on Sir David Waxman will be talking to us. But Jake, Lionel's grandson, stand up, give us, this is Jake, wants to come and see you all. Sylvia, who I'm sure many of you know, and David. Can I remind you, when you come to the microphone, you are responsible for your own conduct. When you ask questions, you will have 1.5 minutes. That's questions, not statements. I just want to remind you, and when the traffic lights turn red, there's no point speaking any further because the microphone, with respect, will be turned off. We have some new deputies today, so I'd like you to give a big welcome, and if the deputies can stand up. Jonathan Rowland, the new deputy for Sale and District Hebrew Congregation. Where are you? Okay, I can't see you, but okay, we've given you a clap. Is Keith Appleby here? Keith, hello, welcome. St Albans United Synagogue, welcome. We also have a new member of staff, Lauren Keeles, Community Engagement Officer, and Lauren would love to meet you. Where are you, Lauren? She's sitting at the back. Well, Lauren, here we go, come in. Lauren's coming in, she's waving from the back. She'd like to meet all of you and get to know all of your communities. And we also have Stuart Williamson, our new financial assistant. Now, as we know, we have an election process underway. There's a by-election for the Defence Division. So I'd like to remind you all, please, to vote for this. And voting is open until 1:15, and the results will be made known to you tomorrow by email. Now, the candidates standing, just a reminder, Richard Byrne, Annabel Daish, Bradley Langer, Susie Rabinovitz, Marilyn Travato, and George White. So Marilyn and George, you're both here. Would you just stand up and make yourselves known? Okay, there we are. Now, unfortunately, Susie's father has been ill, and she hasn't been able to come. So I just wanted to explain that to you. I'd like to thank Karen Newman, who's going to be the returning officer, and our scrutineers, Brian, Gedalia, and Gary Mond. Thank you all for your time. It's very much reminded. Thank you, that it's very voluntary and grateful for that. Can I also remind all deputies of the Board of Deputies annual dinner on the 4th of November. This is our major fundraising event of the year, and we're asking deputies, please bring tables of your friends, your colleagues, and please can you encourage anybody who wants to advertise in the brochure. And just a reminder, we have Natasha Kaplinsky in conversation with Tony Blair, and we're also very lucky to have Tracy Ann Oberman, who's also going to be speaking to us. Now today, we've got two notable speakers, Rabbi Dweck and the Right Honourable Robert Jenrick, MP. Jonathan Arkush has very kindly agreed to stand aside and not talk to us today about Shechita, so the Secretary of State can speak to us instead. So I want to give him my grateful thanks. Now at this point, we were meant to have Rabbi Dweck speak, and I've got the worst of both worlds because I haven't got Rabbi Dweck nor the Secretary of State. I'm just I do have somebody. Do I have the Secretary of... Right, okay, the Secretary of State's going to be coming in. So if you can just be patient for 1 minute. Yes. I don't think that's appropriate suggestion at this point, because we're just about to welcome the Secretary of State. The question that's been put, which I think everybody might hear, is being suggested that it's not appropriate that Jonathan Arkush isn't speaking, but Jonathan Arkush was delighted to allow the Secretary of State to speak. He had the choice, and he decided that he would like to speak at the next board meeting. So it wasn't forced upon Jonathan Arkush. He made the choice himself, because otherwise we would have 3 speakers, which would have been fine, but he made that choice. So I think he's entitled to do so. It's been highly advertised. The Right Honourable Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State. If you look in your agenda, it should be there. We've got Rabbi Dweck instead, have we? Right. Right. I'm told we have both Rabbi Dweck and Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and the Secretary of State is going to speak first, and he's just on his way in. So if you would like to show your appreciation. Thank you. Hello, it's really nice. Very nice to meet you. Is this Michal? Thank you very much. Hello, Michal. Okay, would you like to? I'd also like to thank the Secretary of State's wife, Michal, also for joining us today. So we're delighted to give a big welcome to the Secretary of State. Following the 2017 general election, he was first appointed the Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Home Secretary, the Right Honourable Amber Rudd. And after Boris Johnson was elected Prime Minister, he was appointed to the Cabinet, taking on the position of the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. So we want to give our congratulations and wish the Secretary of State well, and thank him, of course, for coming to spare the time for us on this Sunday morning. So thank you very much. And after this, he's very kindly said that questions can be taken, so I'd like to give the reminder again, the limit of time on those questions, and for the questions to be concise, please, and not statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, and thank you very much for this kind invitation. The Prime Minister was very grateful for the invite, and he does hope to join you as soon as possible, but I'm his warm-up act this morning, and it's a pleasure for me to be here as well. These are certainly eventful times with shifting coalitions and short-lived governments. I'm beginning to think that British politics will make Israeli politics look stable at this rate. But I was certainly delighted to be appointed by Boris Johnson as Communities Secretary just a couple of weeks ago. And I hope in my tenure in that role, I can work productively with all of you to forward our shared agenda. For me, it is a very important part of the role to represent different faith communities, to celebrate the very rich diversity that we have in this country, and to help to build a country which is respectful of faith and protects individual liberty, but which is well integrated and united. And as the UK's longest established religious minority, our Jewish community has led the way in building a united and integrated country and has made such an important contribution to our national life. The British Board of Deputies has been at the heart of this for 250 years or more. And of course, as you know, it's led today very ably by Marie and by Gillian, who is also my former parliamentary neighbour in the East Midlands. And I very much look forward to working with all of you and the wider Jewish community to ensure that you can observe your faith and traditions, achieve your aspirations, and that you continue to grow and prosper in the years ahead. As the Prime Minister has already made very clear, our nation would be less without our Jewish citizens. And as somebody who is married to a Jew and has 3 Jewish daughters, I cannot imagine a Britain without our Jewish friends, our Jewish neighbours, and Jewish loved ones. But like you, I'm all too aware of the challenges that you face. The scourge of anti-Semitism is a stain on our society, whether on our streets or in the comfort of our homes using social media. There is no place for anti-Semitic abuse, and this government will do everything possible to ensure that Jewish people feel safe wherever they are. The government, as you know, led the way by adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and was the first government to do so. But I regret that this lead has not always been followed, even in our own country. Sitting on the front line of our democracy, our local councils, which I now have responsibility for as Secretary of State, have a duty to act and to stamp out anti-Semitism wherever they find it. So I do find it troubling, in some cases, that we're seeing the reverse. I will be writing to all councils insisting that they adopt the RHRA definition at the earliest opportunity and use it in all appropriate occasions, including in their disciplinary proceedings. Boycotts, divestment, and sanctions against the State of Israel are also damaging and divisive, and equally, I won't tolerate them on my watch as Secretary of State. Councils should not be wasting time and taxpayers' money pursuing their own foreign policies, often seemingly obsessed with Zionism to the detriment of delivering high-quality public services for local residents. My British wife was born in Israel, and I visited with her many times. So I'm well placed to say that Israelis are often the fiercest critics of their government's policies. Israel's democracy allows for vibrant debate, and the country is about to head to the polls for a second time in a year. We're still struggling to get to one general election this year. But we live in dangerous times when some, including some who are very prominent in our public life, cannot distinguish between legitimate criticisms of the policies of a democratically elected government and blatant anti-Semitism. Replacing the word Jew for Zionist when peddling vile and offensive views can never sanitize them. Rejecting Israel's right to exist is anti-Semitic, and suggestions that the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism curtails legitimate criticism of the Israeli government is wrong and must be countered. Secondly, I'm also concerned by the evidence coming out of our universities, the disgraceful experiences that some Jewish students have lived through at certain universities. From the case of 200 students voting against the establishment of a new Jewish society at one university. Hitler was right stickers appearing around the campuses of 3 universities, including some very close to my own constituency. to academics indulging in ludicrous and deeply prejudiced conspiracy theories. Attending university for me was a life-enriching experience. Tragically, that's not always the case. We wrote to many universities urging them to adopt the IHRA definition, yet some didn't even reply. These organizations are recipients of public money. Failure to act is unacceptable. As Secretary of State, I will be writing to universities asking them to adopt the definition, and as with council leaders, I will be calling vice-chancellors personally to press for action if none is forthcoming. The figures compiled by the Community Security Trust not only showed anti-Semitic incidents in 2018 at an all-time high for the third year running, but a very significant increase in online hate. In fact, the CST's figures show a 50% increase in online anti-Semitic incidents so far this year alone. Today, I'm pleased to announce on behalf of the government that we're going to be providing an additional £100,000 to tackle the spread of anti-Semitic material on social media. This funding will support the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust's excellent ongoing work to tackle the spread of anti-Semitic tropes online and challenge harmful narratives about the Jewish community. During the latest spending round, the Chancellor doubled the funding for the Place of Worship Fund to £3.2 million. We continue to fund education courses to tackle racism, the outstanding work of the Holocaust Education Trust through their Lessons from Auschwitz programme, and further work is now being commissioned to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, which I played a small part in securing £1.7 million for in my former role at the Treasury. We continue to do all we can to protect Jewish schools and organisations. I'm grateful to the CST, who of course are here today, for their work, and also to all those who volunteer at synagogues, at Jewish schools and Jewish centres to help keep people safe. As a government, we won't tolerate organisations that compromise your safety or spread anti-Semitic hate. As you know, the government prescribed the anti-Semitic Hezbollah terror group in full earlier this year. The untenable distinction between a military and a political wing was dropped after years of campaigning by activists inside and outside of Parliament, myself included. It gives me great comfort that the Hezbollah flag emblazoned with an automatic rifle will no longer be flown with impunity on the streets of London or the UK. And people need to see leadership on this issue from all sides of the political divide. In addition to the appointment of Raymond Chishti MP to succeed Lord Ahmed as Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief, I'm delighted that we now have two independent figures dedicated to tackling anti-Semitism. Lord Pickles and John Mann come from very different political traditions. But both are very strong campaigners and individuals of great integrity, committed to rooting out discrimination, and will bring considerable experience and energy to doing so. I'm pleased that Eric is continuing in his current role as Special Envoy for post-Holocaust issues, ensuring that the UK continues to play a central role in international discussions on Holocaust-related matters, and continuing his brilliant partnership with Ed Balls as co-chairs of the UK Holocaust Memorial Foundation Advisory Board, a partnership that I've seen up close in the last few weeks and is considerably more graceful than anything Ed attempted on Strictly Come Dancing. Eric will also continue to focus on the vital restitution of art and immovable property and promoting the implementation of the Terrorism Declaration and the Holocaust-era assets program. John will be providing me, as Secretary of State, with independent advice on the most effective methods to tackle anti-Semitism within Britain. As he has said, he will continue to call out those throwing stones of hatred at Jewish people, and his role will be to advise my department on combating anti-Semitism wherever it is found in the United Kingdom, particularly where we have seen it take hold and corrupt our institutions. We must ensure that the UK Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre is built in Westminster. The centre has the complete and unshakable support of the Prime Minister and myself. And I politely say, as the new Secretary of State for Local Government, to those who raise concerns about the impact of the new memorial on the park and the setting that it is in today, concerns that my department have engaged with and sought to answer and will continue to do. I too walk in that park when I'm in Westminster on a weekend and appreciate it. I too take my children there to play in the playground, and they enjoy it. But my children are the great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And I don't want them or their children to live through those horrors ever again. It's hard to think of a stronger public interest than that. Help us to build this fitting memorial in the shadow of the Mother of Parliaments and educate ourselves and future generations of the ultimate consequences of hate, prejudice, and discrimination. In my constituency, and only a few miles from Gillian's former constituency, I have the Beth Shalom Holocaust Centre. The founders of that unlikely museum, Stephen and James Smith, were, as you may know, two non-Jews with no prior connection to Israel or the Holocaust, who were so moved by their experience of visiting the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem, and surprised to learn that in this country we have so little to remember and to learn about it, that they returned home to Nottinghamshire and persuaded their parents to convert their own home into a Holocaust museum. I never cease to be amazed and uplifted by that vision, their altruism, and their willingness to make sacrifices. And it makes me even more determined that we show vision and a degree of sacrifice to ensure that we have a national centre built in Westminster. In closing, as long as I am the Secretary of State, you, the Jewish community, will have my unflinching support. So, on behalf of the Prime Minister, Toda Rabba, Anachu Etchem Tamid Veleolam. And we wish you a very happy Rosh Hashanah for the upcoming holidays. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, deputies, if you have any questions, we have 10 minutes. Would you please come to the stand over there? If there are too many, you will not all get a chance to ask your questions. And can I stress again, I'd like your questions, please, to be brief and not statements. Please state your name and constituency. Thank you.
Susan Pascoe, Neostra community, on behalf of everyone, to thank you for very strong, loyal support for the Jewish community and being such a good friend. In relation to your statement about universities, you'll be contacting them about adopting the IHRA definition. We're obviously delighted to hear that. I wanted to raise the question of Israel Apartheid Week, which is a blight on universities every year, mostly February, sometimes spills over into March. Some students are scared to come into campus in Israel Apartheid Week. They feel intimidated, and wondering if you can also incorporate that within your contact.
Sorry, what's your question, please?
Will you be incorporating that into your contact with universities? Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you very much for that question. And prior to my appointment, I did take that issue up with my local universities in Nottingham University and Nottingham Trent University, where, as you know, there's a significant Jewish population. I will take that issue forward, and I've heard from a number of Jewish students the impact that that week can have upon them and their sense of welcome on campus. So thank you very much. I'll take that forward.
Hello, Joe Grabina, Aleph Reform Synagogue. My grandparents were refugees from Nazi-occupied Europe. Their grandchildren went on to be doctors, teachers, social workers, provide a huge amount for this country, as I'm sure a lot of people in this room have similar stories to me. Welcoming the stranger is kind of a core Jewish value, and as someone that's going to be taking responsibility for local government, I know how important kind of liaising with local government and local authorities are to welcoming refugees.
What's your question? I would like everyone there to ask a question, and people will not be able to.
What will this government do to welcome more refugees than the Tory governments have done in the past few years?
Well, my department has played a part, well, certainly local government has, and we've tried to support them in ensuring that refugees, for example, through the Syrian refugee resettlement programme, are very welcome in this country, and that local government has appropriate levels of resources to support them. That's certainly something I intend to continue. We also, in the recent spending review, secured further funding from the Treasury for the teaching of English to new refugees to this country, particularly focused on women, to ensure that those who come here, who are very welcome into British society, can play a full role in the UK. And I'll shortly be launching a cross-government review of how we do that, so that those people who come and make a life here can feel fully included in British society, and particularly women can be more empowered to enter the workplace if they wish to. But I'll take forward your suggestions. I want this country to be a welcoming country. My ancestors perhaps came to this country on an earlier boat to yours, but you won't come across many Jenricks in this country. So my ancestors came here as refugees about 150 years ago. I'm married to someone who's the daughter of people who fled the Holocaust from Poland and Russia to Israel to the United States, and then ultimately ended up here in the UK. I want this country to be a great, open, liberal country where people can find a home.
We've only got 5 more minutes, so no statements. Questions, please.
I'll offer Chigwell and Hainault. Minister, I know that you were previously a support for the Remain campaign during the referendum, and have now voted for a no-deal Brexit in Parliament, which will have dire consequences for jobs, the economy, and the people in this country, your family included. I wanted to ask, how can you support a government that threatened to ignore laws legislated by a sovereign parliament, and a no-deal Brexit, which will put the religious freedoms of Jewish people in this country at risk? Will you then follow in the way of the Right Honourable Member for Hastings and the member for East Surrey, and put country before party? Thank you.
Well, no, I won't be following their example. And, you know, a core tenet of what we're discussing here today is freedom of speech, and we all come to our own conclusion as what the national interest is. You take one view, and I respect that, sir, but I take my own view. And my own view, as a Democrat who voted for the referendum, is we have to honour that result and see it implemented. I also believe that countries can't keep going round in circles. This is a great country, and it's time that we put this issue behind us and moved forward. And all of the values that we care about, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right of this faith community and any other to live in this country protected and respected, that is not reliant on our membership of the European Union. You know, those values existed before we joined the European Union, and I certainly hope they will exist for many, many generations to come.
Now, I'd like I'd like some deputies who do not normally speak and ask a question to have a chance. And I would like Deborah and at the back, because you don't normally speak, so you two come forward first. Sorry, they don't normally ask questions. I'd like you to have an opportunity and you to have an opportunity. And you're next.
Thanks, Marie. Deborah Cohen, Deputy for Belsize Square Synagogue. You might not believe it looking around the room, but actually, like the wider community, we're an ageing community. And I'd like to ask you what you will do to fight for funding for local government, for adult social care in particular. I know there's been an increase in funding, but in truth, those of us who work in the field feel it's a band-aid sticking plaster on a massive problem that we will, all of us, feel the consequences of.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. It is one of the great challenges that we face today. My department and I recently negotiated a better settlement for local government, which the Chancellor announced a week or so ago. You're right to say that isn't the long-term answer. It does actually put the sector on a much stronger, more stable footing. It involves up to £1.5 billion in additional support for local councils to deliver social care, both adult and children, because there's also been a lot of pressure on children's services as well. But the Prime Minister has made clear this is a priority to him, and over the course of the next year, perhaps much sooner than that, we're going to bring forward proposals for the future. And when we come to the next spending review, which will be negotiated in a year's time, which will be a multi-year settlement for local government, I think that's the moment where hopefully we can answer some of the really long-term challenges for the sector. But it has been, the settlement we've achieved has actually been very warmly welcomed by councils of most political colours, as placing them on a much stronger footing for the next 12 months.
Good morning, Alex Arbisman, Croydon Federation. This is the first time I've actually got up in front of this forum, and definitely the first time I've mentioned that I've actually been head of CST for the last 25 years in South London, Surrey and Kent. I've just been in WhatsApp contact with the Chief Executive of CST, and we felt it was an appropriate time just to mention to this room how great a friend the Secretary of State has been for CST, and we thank him for that. Thank you.
Brian Gadalla, Finchley Synagogue. Like everybody else, I'd like to thank you for your speech and for your warm words to the gathered meeting. Very quick question. I noted your comments regarding universities. What action will you be taking to write to and address the issues raised by the refusal of Bristol University to act on a very specific complaint of a quite disgraceful lecture given by one of their lecturers?
Well, I referred to that in my speech. I was very surprised to read that, well, both at Bristol have not adopted, as far as I'm aware, the IHRA definition. They're certainly not applying it in their disciplinary proceedings. And the case that you referred to regarding one professor and a frankly disgraceful lecture series, I think is shameful, actually, that such a respected and important national, international university would harbour somebody teaching young people a course like that in the 21st century. I find extremely, words fail me, really. So that's exactly the reason why I'll be writing to universities. And we've written before, and some universities have failed to act. So what I've said today is that we're going to go further than that. We're going to write requiring universities to do so, and those who don't come back to us, then I will be picking up the phone to those university vice-chancellors and asking them to explain to me why and how they can defend a university lecturer like the one you just referred to.
If it's all right with you, Secretary of State, one last question.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to everyone else.
Thank you.
Apologies.
I'm Laura Marks. I represent the Alliance of Jewish Women, but I'm actually the chair of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, which your department very generously set up and support, and which commemorates the Holocaust and also all the other genocides that have happened since 1945. And I know you don't have any time, so I just really wanted to thank you for the support you give to this work. And there are deputies here from all over the country, and the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust runs events all over the country. And I just wanted to urge you and encourage you to continue to support the work, because I know that all over the country there are people who need to hear about the dangers that hatred leads to, and what can happen when hate goes unchecked. And I think there's a lot of people fearful at the moment about the discourse that's going on in the country, particularly on social media, and to ask you to continue to prioritise this work, which I think all of us consider to be very important.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the work that you do, and all those organisations that help to educate future generations of the horrors of the Holocaust have my great respect, whether it's yourselves, the Holocaust Education Trust, the museum I have in my own constituency, and many others. I will certainly use my office to continue to support the work that you do, and other organisations. You're right that we're living in a time when the country does feel more polarised than I've known it in my adult lifetime, and particularly social media is driving a very poor quality of discourse, and the figures unfortunately speak for themselves. The CST's figures that we published just a few weeks ago that showed that there was an almost 50% increase in this year alone in reported incidents of anti-Semitic hate online really is a serious cause for concern, and we need to reach into schools and communities across the country to try to educate people. So thank you very much for what you're doing. And Marie, can I thank you very much for the way you've chaired this? I think this is an audition for the next Speaker of the House of Commons. I think.
Thank you. Well, order. Amanda Bowman will now say a note of thanks, but I'd like to also thank Michal and Secretary of State for coming. Thank you. It's so appreciated. But over to Amanda.
So, Secretary of State, on behalf of the Board of Deputies, we thank you so much, and to you, Michal, for coming to be with us today and for your words. Despite the challenges that you outlined, the UK is a great place for British Jews. But we will not sit quietly when anti-Jewish hatred is, as you say, increasing, with up to 50% increase this year on reports of anti-Semitism online. This shows that such incidents are becoming, sadly, somewhat normalised. So we cannot sit quiet, but we welcome your announcement of an additional 100,000 to tackle anti-Semitism. And we'll continue to work with you and to support you and the work that you're doing, and are grateful for the support of the government. Many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks. Please, yeah.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Dweck also for waiting. We're very, very grateful to you. So without further ado, Rabbi Dweck will come to the stand. Can I just give everybody a reminder that Rabbi Dweck is the senior rabbi of the S&P Sephardi community in the UK, born in America. He's lived in Los Angeles, California, Brooklyn, New York, and now residing in London with his wife Margalit and 5 children. He studied in Jerusalem at the Yeshiva Chazon Avodah under the former Sephardi chief rabbi, Ovadia Yosef, from whom he received his rabbinic ordination. Rabbi Dweck has also studied psychology and philosophy at the Santa Monica College in California and
About 6.5 years ago, as I was already elected and brought in for the position, I came to meet with Rabbi Sachs, who was then still the chief rabbi. And we were sitting and we were talking about the job, and he said, you know, Rabbi Dweck, you, along with the chief rabbi, are the ecclesiastical authority to the board of deputies. And I said, really? What does that mean? And he said, I don't know. But if it means that I get to address the deputies and share some thoughts with the board occasionally, I am grateful for that honor, and I'm very much thankful to you for your time today. I want to talk with you about freedom, if I may. Freedom for us, for the Jewish people, is absolutely central. We don't stop talking about it. It is very much the fundamental core of everything that we are as a people. So far more often than we say God, the creator of heaven and earth, we say God, who took us out of Egypt, who freed us from the house of slavery. Everything about us is focused on freedom. Freedom is dangerous and threatening and a difficult task to bear. Erich Fromm wrote a book called Escape from Freedom. And in this book, he talks about the natural path that freedom takes for human beings. All of us start with our origins, by definition. The place in which we find our initial connections, our opening relationships of life, whether it be our family, whether it be our country, whether it be our community, whether it be all of those. There comes a time when we begin to step away from those things. We begin to explore what it means to be me as an individual, as a free being in this world. And that means that we seek freedom from the original confines. And I use that word consciously because to a certain degree, even our own family is confining to our own individual freedom. We all have to learn rather than freedom from, that we find ourselves whole and stable and integrated again in the world. What are those things that help us reconnect as free people to a new world in which I can stand individually strong and reconnect and engage with the world around me? Fromm suggests that it is 2 major things. One, spontaneous love. If I can find love that is spontaneous because of who it is that I am, that I find that people love me because I am this, person. Not because I was born with you, not because I am the brother, sister, son, daughter of someone, but because of who I am. It heals the anxieties, the isolations, the doubt. And if I can engage in creative work in which I can express who I am, how I think, the way that I see this world, it heals the anxiety, doubt, and isolation. But it is not an easy path. Those feelings torment us if we are honest. Be clear that that path to freedom doesn't just happen to individuals. It happens to aggregates of individuals. It happens to communities, to nations, to the entirety of the human race. Fromm looked at it as beginning in the West with the Italian Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation. Suddenly, the very clear boundaries that we had in a feudal system were dissolved. Suddenly, the very clear notion that I had as a brother or sister of the Church, the Catholic Church, which was in control of the entirety of Europe, all of that dissolved. Liberating? Yes. Freeing? Absolutely. Anxiety-ridden? You bet. We, the Jewish people, have been on a long path to freedom. I believe that we still find ourselves in the middle, in where we are individuating. Bear with me. We're going back 2,000 years. A blink of an eye in Jewish history. But we go back 2,000 years where we were sovereign in our land, a nation before we were a religion. And we were exiled. Like it or not, we were on a path towards freedom. We were forced to step away from our original confines and find our individual expressions. And so, like cells of a body, we were dispersed, separated from each other. We found ourselves, really, pretty much everywhere. There's not a country, not a people, not a language on this earth that we have not spoken, not a culture that we have not experienced, not a system of thought that we have not absorbed into our national psyche. Think of that for 1 minute. We found ourselves in cities all over the world. Baghdad, Budapest, Berlin. And in those places, for a time, we really believed that we were the only ones. We really did. I mean, we kind of knew that there might have been other members of the nation somewhere else, but, they were not in our range of thought. I mean, I can speak about my own ancestors living in Aleppo, Syria. Unfortunately, there's almost no Aleppo anymore. It's sad. But we always thought that the Jews in Damascus really had nothing to do with Judaism. We didn't let our kids marry. Heaven forbid that there should be any kind of cavorting relationships, kids playing together. I mean, we tried to maintain that even in New York. There are still remnants of it today. We joke about it, It's the same kind of jokes that we make when we talk about intermarriage and having a Sephardi marry an Ashkenazi. Can't tell you the number of times a member of my community said, "Oh yeah, I married out." Talking about his Ashkenazi wife. It's individuation. We took a long time to find unique expressions that were manifest in our nationhood. But now we're seeing something else happen. We're starting to come back together again. And it's shocking. for us and for the entire rest of the world. It's shocking. Because suddenly, we walk the streets of Israel, which is shocking in its own right, should never have happened. 2,000 years we've been away, and suddenly we're walking the streets like, yeah, okay, we were away for a little bit, back home again. We walk those streets, we travel there for holiday, we have flats in Herzliya, as if it is a non-thing. As if the very fact that that is happening right under our eyes is not one of the greatest miracles, not that our people, but the entire world has ever seen. And I'm not exaggerating. And so we are now learning what it means to reconnect. And yet this time we are richer than we have ever been. Because what we bring to the table this time is all of the myriad beauty that we have gained in the time that we were individuating. And so Aleppian Jews butt up against German Jews. They're skeptical for a minute. They question, are you Jewish? But I'll tell you what it is that I'm seeing. And this is just me, so you can toss it in the rubbish on your way out. But I'll tell you what I'm seeing, for whatever it's worth. I'm seeing that the children of those who have returned home are just Israeli citizens. We should be watching that. We should remember that we were a nation before we were a religion. But something else is happening as a result of our family coming back together again. The world is taking notice, and it makes us uneasy. And make no mistake, it makes them uneasy. The world can't help but take notice when the Jewish people come together again. When they find themselves sovereign in their own homeland 2,000 years after they left. When that unity sheds light on every Jew in every country on this planet. Every community, every synagogue, every organization, everything. We can't avoid it, nor should we wish to. Although there may be tendency, as there is in the process of individuation, to submit and hide from the light that is shown on the growth of the unique individual that is happening. And in this case, it is our nation and our people that is growing. So one of the unfortunate derivatives of that is anti-Semitism. Of course, it's always been there, wherever it is that we've been. But it's never been so threatening. We are coalescing, synergizing, becoming whole again as a people. And the world is taking note, and there is concern. You can write off anti-Semitism to any local issues that you wish, Israel, whatever the elements of Jewish life may be, Jewish innovation, wisdom, what have you. I believe that that is all a faint echo from the pure fact that we shouldn't be here, and that we don't go away, and that when we come together, we are stronger than we even believe that we can be. So what do we do? As a board, British Jews, the British side of the family, what do we do? I am not in a position to advise the board. The board has its work cut out for it, if we are honest. But I am definitely confident in the board's capacity to be able to do what is right. We have strong leadership and strong representation. I believe in it. What I'm speaking to you about this morning is us, not what we're doing out there, but what we're doing in here. And the truth is, the board is a wonderful example. because at the board, we represent everyone. We don't look at the denominations. At the Board of Deputies, we remember that we are Jews, and that's the most important thing. I would like to believe, you'll forgive me, I would like to believe that the Sephardi origins of the board had something to do with that. You can't blame me, can you? I would like to believe that there was something about the original 7 Sephardi deputies that were gathered for King George III's reign, accession, that just as the Sephardi Jews in this country have always embraced all Jews, that we have not denominated amongst ourselves, that we have held a standard, yes, but that we have embraced everyone, that was somehow a founding stone to the Board of Deputies of British Jews. I would like to end with this thought. You'll forgive me, but I'm going to take advantage of being a rabbi at this moment and be theological. I believe that no Jew on this planet, if they think in terms of their Judaism, can disregard that we are a people because of our covenant with God. We have a brit, a covenant with God. If you ask me, I think that plays no small part in the very reality of us being here as Jews, as a nation, sovereign on our homeland, strong wherever it is that we find ourselves, able to speak of ourselves not as people who once were connected to Jews, but Jews, the nation of Israel today. But here's something that I think we forget about that covenant. The covenant, the foundational element of the covenant, is not with a theology, not with a philosophy, not with a belief system, although those things are important and part of our people. But the foundational element of the covenant is not in any one of those things. The foundational element of the covenant is in the body of Israel, the people, the nation, you and me. Every single one of us, every Jew on this earth is a cell in that body. The proof to that is, even halachically, once a Jew, always a Jew. You could believe what you wish, but you can't stop being one, no matter how much you wish to. Does the wish to stop being one put us in danger? Yes, I believe it does sometimes, but one cannot negate that every single one of us, every one of us, are a cell in that body. And if we are to face the fact that the world is concerned about our unity, to put it lightly, there is one thing that we all must do: bond, unite. Remember that more important right now at this time, more important than anything else for the Jewish people are not questions of theology, philosophy, and belief, but questions of recognizing that we are cells to the body of the whole people and that we are in covenant with God. And that is the base. It always has been, it always will be. Please God, we will come to a point in where we are comfortable and happy and whole enough without concerns from the outside, which we can discuss our beliefs. I look forward to the day. But right now, the first and main thing that we must remember is that we are one people. And that as we were burned by the fires of the world for 2 millennia, and we still sit here strong and confident, we shall carry on doing so. May we do so with minor to no casualty. May we do so as one, with one heart and one soul. And if I may, a blessing, may God bless us and find favor in our actions. and bring us to being whole and united, always in all that we do. Thank you.
If anyone would like to ask some questions, please come to the microphone. And I want to thank Rabbi Dweck for such a heartwarming and absolutely moving speech to us. And I'm very proud about the Sephardi origins that we have for the Board of Deputies, and particularly the likes of Sir Moses Montefiore and the Montefiore family, who've done such amazing things for the board.
Robert Stone, Finnish Reform Synagogue. First of all, thank you, Rabbi, for an amazing and inspiring speech. You began by talking about freedom, and Kierkegaard said that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And I have to confess that I'm anxious. I am of mixed race. My father was a Polak and my mother was a Litvak. And
shocking.
You say rightly that we are coming together, and in many ways we are coming together. Syrian Jews, Aleppo, but that's not so serious now. But I still feel that I'm coming to it.
Tough room.
I still feel that apart from the Semitism outside, there are many divisions within us that remain quite strong. As you know, Rabbi, not just in here, but also in Israel, where as a Reform
Right, I'm
Jew,
going to say it now. What's the question, please?
I'm going to ask, how are we going to come together when there is still so much friction and heat in the friction here and in Israel between different kinds of Jews in religion, not origin?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Again, only my perspective. Two responses to that. One, I genuinely believe that it begins with people. If we are going to sit here and think, how is the top-down tactic that we're going to take in order to be able to dissolve the divisions, good luck. It begins with people. It begins with being prepared to actually sit and engage with a Jew that you otherwise would normally never. It begins with the personal connections and relationships. I believe that wholeheartedly. I know that from my own experience, and I believe that that is the way that it will begin and carry forward. Aside from that, again, I'm sorry, I'm a rabbi, so you're going to have to forgive me for this. I believe in God. And I very much believe in the words of our prophets, that there will come a day. I don't know how it happens, and I don't know how to write the story. But I do believe in my heart, deep down, and there is deep hope in my heart, that our people will come together, and that the unique colors of our people will find themselves coalescing in very beautiful wholeness. I hope that I and you will be able to see it in our lifetimes, but if not, let it be in our children's and our grandchildren's. But I'm very hopeful for it. Yeah.
Bruce Greenberg for Northampton Hebrew Congregation, previously Temple Bethel, Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you, Rabbi.
I knew you were a comrade.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Rabbi Dweck. Earlier this year, on Tuesday, August 20th, President Trump was speaking to the press in the Oval Office about two Democratic congresswomen barred from entering Israel over their involvement in the movement to end international support for Israel because of Israel's policies towards Palestinians. Now, Trump went on to say, and I quote, "I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty." Well, as a lifelong Democrat myself, in fact, I'm a yellow dog Democrat, I took this as a personal insult.
Even Democrats have to ask straight questions because...
As a fellow American, what's your opinion of this and our so-called commander-in-chief?
Yeah. Well, that's not a loaded question. I will say this very simply. Politics are politics. And, you know, they asked me that question when I was in interview for the position. They gave me a subject and said, you have 5 minutes to prepare. And the subject was rabbis and politics, discuss. And I simply said this, and I will say this. people forget what the word means. The word politics simply means the jockeying for power position. That's what politics is. And any time that you have people, you have politics. Families have politics. Usually the power sits with the 2-year-old. But the reality is that politics are politics. So every politician will be always jockeying for positions of power. And we as people must always recognize our politic filter and recognize what are the core issues and what are the politics. So it's expected that President Trump would say that. But, you know, as far as the Democrats and the Jews and so on and so forth, I say again, our people are cells to the body of the nation, and there are a considerable number of cells that are Democrats. And for me, that is secondary to them being members of the body. And that is the way that I think we should be focusing right now, today. Cheers.
I just want to say we're going to be finishing in just over an hour and we haven't got on to the President's statement, so I need to manage the meeting. Could you all perhaps ask your questions, and would you mind taking them together?
Yeah.
So there'll have to be brief questions, please. Thank you.
Do you not agree that when you said the nation came before the religion, in fact it came at the same time? We were told, we said, let our people go to serve the Lord, and we received the Torah, and therefore the two things are definitely interconnected, cannot be split, and there needs to be, the problem in this country, in my opinion, is a very good question, the first person. And the question
Can we have your question then?
Excellent. That is it not the case that you need people have a similar ethos? The people in the South seem to have one ethos, there seems to be a North. And the question
What's the question, please?
You decide things not by majorities, but by coming together to understand what the needs of those people are. And it's not just, this is a very serious point. This is the root of what we have at the problem. Right. And we must have a similar ethos.
Deputies,
now, you cannot create, do you not agree? You cannot create an ethos by a vote in Parliament.
Right, thank you.
Because you don't like the question. Do you not agree?
Do
you not agree that the fundamental thing is you need to
have
a common ethos?
I'm sorry, we're moving on
and then
to the next question. Would you turn off the microphone? Thank you. I really think that we shouldn't behave like that in front of Rabbi Dweck, and we'd all been doing so well. Come on. I'm sure you've seen worse, but that's not the point.
That comes with being a rabbi for 20
I know, you've been a rabbi, you've seen it. However, come on, right, could the remainder of you please ask concise questions, and Rabbi Dweck will take them all at once. Thank you.
Irene Mansfield, Muswell Hill United Synagogue. As the proud Ashkenazi mother-in-law of a wonderful Mizrahi daughter-in-law, I totally endorse your statement. I also have a flat in Netanya rather than Herzliya.
Right. Come on, the rest of you,
what's
your question?
Is, the worry that I have every time I go to Israel, how do we overcome, or do you see a conflict between the fact that there are so many non-religious, religiously ignorant Jews in Israel who are devoted and fight for Israel? And is Israel now going to become a national state rather than a religious state? Do we want an Israel that is a country for Jews, or a Jewish country?
That's a good question.
It's 2 questions now. Which one of you two, please, can ask a question? Come on, both of you. Show us how to do it.
Denise Lester, Southampton United Synagogue. Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to invite you to consider, in fact, don't you think that we've already come together as different types of Jews, as a nation and worldwide, because with the advent of worldwide communication, we are there, and there's a mystical perspective and dimension involved. So I'm flipping your argument on the head. I think we're already there. But do you not think that we have to engage in the dignity of difference in terms of our respect for each other's views, to quote Lord Sachs? Thank you. And to also engage in outwardness in terms of our relationships and how we deal with other peoples and faiths. And that's our unique mission and covenant with God. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question, because we are very short on time now. Thank you.
Stuart Goodman, Plymouth. Rabbi Dweck, thank you for your inspiring and so well-delivered sermon. The question I would like to ask is this: to what extent do you believe that Israel unnecessarily contributes to anti-Semitism?
Thank you for the questions. I am conscious that we are pressed with time, and so I will answer briefly all of them to the best of my ability, but I say also, take the answers as being brief and understand that they tug at some very big issues. The first being, are we a religious nation, or are we a nation of a religious people or not, and how does Israel look, moving forward? I do believe that our religious thought, the elements of our Torah, if I can say it that way, are inherent to our people. And it is something that if we are going to be living as a whole and robust nation, it must play central part to us as a people. There's no question about that in my mind. My point is that if we are going to rebuild our unity, it must begin from the bottom up. And the bottom up is we are all one people, and we are cells to that body. And we have to look at that first, not only, but first. And then, when we have that, we will have a capacity to be able to look at the higher truths as one people. But to start with those things now is working against us, in my personal opinion. That brings us to the second question. Do I think that we're already there? No, I do not. And the reason I think that we are not there yet is because I do think that we have tremendous dissonance between our own people. I think that we have enough dissonance aimed at us from the outside that there should not be the levels of dissonance that I see within. If you do not see them, I'm interested to understand your point of view. But make no mistake, the logistics of connection that we have in our world today, which is absolutely remarkable, and where we can connect to practically anyone on the planet simply with my phone, doesn't mean that we are unified. It means that we have the mechanisms through which we can unify, and that's a nice start, but it isn't the end. And finally, do I think that Israel, serves or contributes to the anti-Semitism? I think that that's a question that all of us ask as individuals. Do I do things in my life that don't shed great light on who it is that I am? Yes, I think that everybody does that at one time or another. But it's not a reason to discount me as a person. And it is similarly not a reason to discount Israel as a nation. Every nation on this earth does things that does not shed light well on its own being and ethos. And that is something that is part and parcel of the human condition. Let us not forget that. Thank you so very much.
Rabbi.
Edwin, please, can you wait? Because Edwin's just going to say a quick vote of thanks.
Rabbi, ever since you came to these shores, you brought with you, as you did this morning, energy, wisdom, and inspiration. You have reached out to dozens of communities and synagogues and associations, Sephardi, Ashkenazi, and non-Jewish. No less a figure than Rabbi Ovadia Yosef said about you that you bring merit to your community. And may I add, you bring merit to the whole of the Jewish people and to humanity itself. Thank you very much. We are informed.
Deputies, thank you very much. Can I now introduce to you Sir David Waxman, our beloved President Lionel Kopolowicz's stepson, who is going to come up to the podium to give a tribute to Lionel. And can we also give a warm clap for Sylvia and grandson Jake, who wanted to be here with you today. Jake as well. Do you want to stand up? And give a wave? And I'm trying to encourage Jake to become a deputy in due course, to follow in the family footsteps.
Well, thank you very much.
The floor is yours for a tribute. I'm afraid there will be no questions because we're running very short of time, so thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And my mother, Jake, and I are deeply honoured to have been invited to this meeting of the Board of Deputies to pay tribute to Lionel. We feel that today we are really his own deputies, and he surely would have approved. And it's also, I think, very appropriate that the board is now meeting in this room in BMA House, which is a magnificent fusion of Lionel's two lifelong interests, the board and the BMA. I just want to share a couple of personal thoughts with you. I do, of course, know of Lionel from a very young age because he was a leading communal figure in Newcastle. Who didn't? But he was also a personal friend of my mother, Sylvia, and my late father, Marek. And in 1977, when I was considering whether I should stand to become the sabbatical chair of the Union of Jewish Students, IUJF, as it was formerly known, I called my father and asked, could I stand? Should I stand? And he said, well, I'll think about it. Thinking about it meant go and have a word and consult with Lionel. Lionel's response was typical, both kind and communally savvy. He said, listen, David's going to do it, whatever you say. He's not asking for your permission. He's asking for your blessing. Echoing a line from, of course, Fiddler on the Roof. And he was absolutely right. But when I assumed that role, Lionel was, of course, already in high, but not the highest office yet at the board. And it was he who actually got me and the UJS much more interested in its activities. He was hugely supportive of our work in protecting the rights of Jewish students on campus. And in many ways, Lionel's entire communal career has been about protecting those rights, which he did fiercely and proudly. But there was another aspect of his life which was really part of his essence also. And again, to echo Fiddler on the Roof, tradition. Tradition in the broadest sense of the word, in terms of the preservation of the culture and the values which we all share and which have informed this community for so long. And he did all that from a position of deep knowledge. But he was not an insular man. His great love was world history. We have a magnificent collection of books which we intend to send to a worthy recipient in due course. He was still writing book reviews on the very day that he was admitted to hospital. He was a man of this world, be it through his interfaith work, his practice as an NHS doctor, his countless meetings and correspondence with leaders, both secular and spiritual, from all over the world. And his philosophy, which he imbued in me and my sons and Jake, was don't waste your time. If you have spare time, use it to develop yourself and to help others. And finally, let me say this. The greatest tribute to Lionel that I can think of is the quite remarkable support which the family has had since he passed away from the board. From the very kind remarks made about him at your last meeting, from the fact that the president found the time to come up to Newcastle, to go to the Lavoya, and to all the board's contributions to the Jewish press, which were deeply appreciated. On that note, and I'm not going to say any more about it, the preparation of the new obituary is now underway. The family have been asked for and have been provided a great deal of information for it, and it will come out in due course. It's always, when thanking people, very invidious to single out an individual, but I'm going to do so here. I'm going to make a special thanks to Jerry Lewis. He was a devoted, lifelong friend of Lionel, who always looked after him. He schlepped him here, schlepped him there, made sure that he didn't miss anything that he wanted to go to so that he could make his own contribution to it. Jerry was always there, and he has continued his involvement with the family since Lionel passed away. And of course, there have been many, many people from all around the country who have felt the same love and respect for Lionel. I know, because they've told me. And that, perhaps, is his greatest legacy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Turning to the minutes of the meeting of the board on the 28th of July, there are two amendments. One of them, Spencer Nathan. At the end of clause 31, it says that reform are excluded, and it should read instead Liberal, majority and independent groups. And Jerry Lewis has got one amendment to the previous minutes on page 4. The word is should be replaced with was. Andrew Murison MP was on the Conservative Middle East Council. Does anyone have any other amendments to the minutes? Thank you. Coming on now to the President's statements. We have got many mazel tovs, but I would like to give a special mazel tov to Phil Rosenberg, as this time last week he got married to Frances in Jerusalem, and it was a wonderful wedding. And see how devoted he is to his duties. He's here with us today. Does anyone have any questions, if they would like to come to the microphone on the President's statement? When this was written, a week is a long time in politics, because we were looking at a possible general election, and we were concerned about Sukkot, and now we're concerned we may not get a general election at all. So things have greatly changed. We don't know what's going to be happening.
Joe Millis, Bromley Reform. Regarding the President's statement on the issue of the Holocaust Memorial, at what level was a decision taken here without discussion that the board will support the one in Victoria Tower Gardens? And why did the President hint that those who are opposed to it in Victoria Tower Gardens do so from anti-Semitic motives, and does she include Baroness Deitch and Melanie Phillips in that description? Thank you.
I think people have got respectful disagreement. It is my firm view, and the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, put it well, that it is absolutely fitting that there should be a Holocaust memorial to remember the Holocaust, and what better place than in the shadow of Parliament that there be a permanent reminder. Now, people do have different points of views, even Jews, and I greatly respect Baroness Deitch, but I think there is nothing more important. You've also heard Laura Marks, who is the chair of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, and I can think of nothing better, especially as Holocaust survivors become fewer and fewer. I can only say that is, in my mind, very important, and I respect the fact that other people feel differently. But the majority of Jewish opinion, in my view, is that there should be a Holocaust memorial, and that is a very fitting place. And I will do all I can to encourage people to give it support. Of course, I understand the concerns of local residents, but this is a very special project, and I hope that we will all give our support to Gerald Ronson and Ed Balls, who are working very hard also to find the money for this project. Thank you for your question.
David Farby, Finchley Reform. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to achieve a miracle by asking the President 3 questions in a minute and a half. Question 1 arises from your response to a question by Robert Stone, which itself arose from the debate of last month, which is to do with concerns about the position of progressive Jews in Israel, and your response was that this would be subsumed into a wider investigation by the International Division. Could we, however, please have your reassurance that this specific issue won't be kicked into the long grass, will be borne in mind, and may be brought back to us and will be progressed? Number 2, a response in your last President's statement. I raised the question then about the board plan as required by Rule 15 of the Constitution. That is, that there should be a plan for the board for the triennial period, agreed within 3 months of the triennial starting. You then said last month that strategies were coming together and that the plan would be almost ready to present to us. It isn't today. Could you please update us on where it's got to and what's happening? And question 3, not in the President's statement, we will have seen in the last month an enormous coming and going at Kentish Town, and I think I'm right in saying an unprecedented change over of our full-time staff. I think sufficient to ask for an explanation. Could we have an explanation, please?
I didn't hear that question, and you've gone well past your minute and a half.
So I got 3 in a minute and a half.
Oh, Stuart will deal with that question, I'm told. In relation to the position of progressive Jews in Israel, yes, it won't be kicked into the long grass, but what I suggest, which would be very helpful, perhaps Reform Judaism will also invite me to one of their board meetings, because that would obviously be a good one to also discuss with them. And I think you've heard today from Rabbi Dweck about how important it is that the Board of Deputies is a place for all Jews, and I really feel that it is, and of course that's extremely important. And when Gillian and I went to see Prime Minister Netanyahu, we absolutely made the case for progressive Jews, and we particularly brought up the issues around the Kotel, and we've given that great force with him. But yes, of course it's something that we will continue to raise. In relation to the board plan, though there isn't anything presented to you on paper, I don't want you to think there isn't a plan. One of the big things, the constitutional changes, are well underway, and there is a huge amount of work going on. I have now received the community and education plan and the international plan and the plan from the F&O. So this now is going to be put into one plan, and Stuart will now be helping Amanda to do that. So I now have received from the divisions their plans, which are quite detailed. But my presidential plan from when I was elected to carry out major reforms in relation to the Constitution, I believe that will be done by the end of the year, and it will probably be the biggest change the Board of Deputies has ever seen, and that is well underway, and we've got everybody working very hard in the presidential working group on that. So you will see big change.
Thank you. What about the staff turnover?
Stuart's going to talk about that. Stuart's going to pick that one up when he talks. Next question, thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
Good afternoon, Robert Fessenstein, Presbyterian Chief of Congregation. My question is about the lack of regional representation. I know that the Regional Council have been pushing for a regional employee for some time now, and it's a concern that we see that another communal officer has been appointed in London. Now, what you may not know is that there is a disconnect between the regions and Kentish Town. In Manchester, a shul has now, the Shari Shalom, Reform Shul in North Manchester, has now left the board. They don't feel any association, anything that they can do with the board. I've read the division reports of the International Community and Defence Division, and out of what appears to be about 60 events, I can count only 5 that were attended by any deputies. There needs to be a greater involvement between Kentish Town and the regions, and I don't understand why you have employed a communal officer in London when there is a desperate need for one in Manchester and the north?
Well, the communal officer that you're talking about, and I think it's a bit of a perhaps unfortunate question when she's her first week standing in the back of the room for her new job. She is a communal engagement officer who is going to be travelling all around the community. She doesn't plan to actually sit at her desk in Kentish Town. She's certainly prepared for engagement. She had wanted to engage also today with the regional council to introduce herself, but unfortunately they didn't feel that they could give her the time to do that during the course of the meeting. So she does want to engage. Now there is a proposal which has been made by the regional council to employ somebody elsewhere in the country, and it's being put in Manchester. Now, there are some issues that we are trying to sort out with the regional levy because we haven't been receiving it from many parts of the regions. And as a trustee of the Board of Deputies, we also have to make sure that we've got the money to make it pay and have the right resources. So we have a meeting set up in Manchester in October to discuss these issues, and they'll have to be discussed democratically, as Robert will know, through the Finance and Organisation Division, having a look at what the job descriptions are, what the needs are, and what the money is. So everybody wants to engage with the regions. I certainly want to engage with the regions. We certainly do, but we do want to have somebody who will also travel anywhere, because we think community engagement is important. So the person that we've employed, she's not having her feet up in London. So I just want to make that clear. So it's work in progress, but thank you for your question. And perhaps the Regional Council could consider giving Lauren an opportunity to introduce herself today, because she's been told that she can't talk until the end of the meeting. And that's not very fair, because it's got nothing to do with the job in Manchester.
Ben Lewis, Reform Judaism. We've heard a lot very movingly from Rabbi Dweck and just now from you, Marie, about unity and bringing our community together. And I would agree that we need to take every opportunity to bring everyone in our community together. And one of our community's proudest exports in this field is Limud and the Limud Festival in December, which I'm very proud to be one of the chairs of this year. After your experience attending last year, Marie, would you be willing to encourage all deputies here and everyone in the wider community to come along to Limud Festival this year, to sign up and to take part in this celebration of what brings us together and unites us, regardless of everything that divides us? I
absolutely would. I went for the whole time last year, and I'm going to go for the whole time this year. I was even in a dance troupe. It was a tribute last year. It was quite funny. It was a fantastic weekend and week, and I absolutely encourage everybody to go. It's the most brilliant experience. I mean, 3,000 Jews all in one place. It's incredible, from the being a baby to being elderly people, from every affiliation going. It really is the most wonderful event, and I definitely would encourage you all to go. Thank you. Paul.
Paul Edlin, Chairman of the Regional Council in this instance. I wasn't going to speak today, President, but as a matter of the appointment of the officer in London has been brought up, I have to state several things. First of all, we have nothing against the appointment or the person. I was asked on Thursday evening, I believe, I heard about the request that she should speak first for 10 minutes to present at the Regional Council today. I said it would not be possible because we have a very full agenda.
Sorry, can I just ask Lauren to go downstairs, because it's not very fair for her to hear about her job.
Let me please finish.
Would you like to leave the room,
All
Lauren?
I'm saying is we did offer to have her speak at the end of the meeting, and that offer stands. That is all I have to say.
Lauren was actually told, looking in the emails, if there was time,
Paul,
she could speak as a concession.
You presented it as a concession by you. You were grudging about it. You did not offer
your opinion.
To guarantee. You said you could not guarantee to let her speak.
Well, I was asked at the last
you're being
minute.
economical with
No,
what you
I
wrote
haven't
yourself.
said. I have said, as how I see it, and not only myself, but the other two speakers who were here before the microphone said the same. That is not the issue. I don't even know who the person is.
What I would say is, would the regional council please let a young person, she's just joined the board, please let her say what her job is. It's got nothing to do with the request for another position in Manchester. She's a young girl, she's started her job this week. All she wants to do is introduce herself, and I'm ashamed that if people are not welcoming to a new member of staff. She's here to help you. Thank you. That's what it's about, working together, being together. And we can argue robustly and democratically for resources and things we want, but we've all got to work together. Thank you. Ruth.
Ruth Hart, Bournemouth Reformed Synagogue. I'd like to ask about the Regional Levy because, like a lot of things, London and the South East tends to suck up resources, and the richest congregations tend to be in London and the less wealthy in the region. So perhaps we should consider how this is paid and whom it is levied upon.
Can I just say, we have a lack perhaps of the regional levy from Manchester, but the board is still paying our expenses, everybody's travel. We actually probably spend more on the regions than you realise because everybody gets all their expenses paid, and we don't have income. So it might be unseen ways that we are actually supporting the regions, but I absolutely want the regions to be supported. It was a key part of my manifesto, and I agree that support should be given. And I myself spend a lot of time travelling outside London, and so do the honorary officers, and we've had a request which will be considered democratically, and the levy is £30 which we ask for, and considering the work we do, I think it's a bargain. I think it's the best money as Jews that anybody could spend myself. You. Can I just remind people, if they haven't voted still, that they can still do so. If we've now, and I'd like to thank you, finished the President's statement, can we come on to the divisional reports? I'd like to ask Sheila, could you please present your report first for international? And then we'll come to the executive report after. I want to make sure we've done the divisional reports.
Okay, thank you, Marie. Am I switched on?
Sorry, I'm just going to help Sheila.
Thank you. She's very technical, Marie. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, happy to present my report. Proud of all the work we've done. You should have it in front of you. This report runs from our last meeting since July. And a couple of things I'd like to highlight, things that are actually on the report. So first of all, we did have a meeting in July. The attendees to that meeting will be reported next time in our report. Somebody's mentioned about the survey that the International Division are currently working on. This will be a survey about the board's attitude towards the work it does on Israel, and this will go to all deputies. We are at the state now of a final draft being submitted to professional people, academics and professional market researchers, so as we have the format with which to elicit unskewed, unbiased views, okay? And we are hoping to get this to all deputies by the next meeting in November. This is really important. We will be halfway through this triennium, and we've worked really hard on this. And I want to thank all divisional members, all members of staff who've had input into this really detailed survey. So watch out for that one. The second thing I'd like to announce is tomorrow morning, myself, Marius Bischoff, who is my International Relations Officer, and Ido Ben Shol, my Vice Chair, we are travelling as guests of the Foreign Ministry in Azerbaijan for a 6-day visit. Now, this has come about from a connection we made at one of the boards and JLC's councillor seminars held in Westminster, where we engaged with a young gentleman who is working on a PhD of the Jews in Azerbaijan. He is not himself Jewish, but very supportive. He is a Westminster councillor. He has spoken at our divisional meeting. He has reached out and says it's long overdue that the Jews of Azerbaijan have had any connection with the Jewish community, and I'm really proud they have come to the board to start this engagement. And there will be lots of pictures and reporting on the embassies, on the ministries, on the Jewish community, on the mountain Jews of Azerbaijan that we will be bringing back with us. And thank you, everybody, for all your hard work. Thank you.
I just remind everyone you've got 15 minutes left to vote. Stuart, could you now please give your report, please? Could someone also bring me a form to vote?
Okay, this is on. Good. I'm going to be really quick. Several things. The board's finances continue to be in fairly good shape, thanks to the FNO, thanks to the board's professional staff, thanks to some good fortune. We're not out of the woods in the long run yet, and it is absolutely crucial that those of you who have not even thought about, because I know some of you haven't even thought about it, have not thought about supporting our main fundraising activity, which falls into two different areas. Really think about contributing. It's not just about you as consumers of what the board can give you. The President's Dinner is coming up. A number of you have very generously offered to support the board through advertising, or to help try to pursue potential sponsors, or you're inviting people and you're submitting lists to Nicole Pepe at the board, or you are coming forward as table hosts. That's fantastic, but most of you are not. That is, I'm sorry, free riding. You could contribute invitees if you really made the effort, most of you. And please do, it is so important. It's our main fundraising event, and we have distinguished people appearing at the podium speaking, and it really is a very important event for us. The other way in which you can help is with a community contribution. Please, many of you really do make an effort there, and it's wonderful, but please impress on your respective organizations how important it is to support us. We have not raised the community contribution for several years. We may well do so over the next year or so again, but it's still a bargain. It's a steal at £30. And a lot of you have not yet, this sounds like housekeeping, but it's really important. A survey was sent out a couple times to all of you, and sorry if any of you haven't received it, a survey about how does the community contribution get raised within your organization. Please, if you haven't done so, get it back to us. It's so important to us so that we can fill any gaps in our knowledge. Now, just some other bits and pieces. In terms of staffing, a number of you with whom I'm friendly, out of hours as it were, call me up from time to time with various concerns. A lot of people have asked about staff turnover. Really, we've just had a bunching of it, and I'm not dissembling here. The reality is that, if anything, we have lengthened the tenure of the average member of staff that we've enjoyed over the last few years, just as the bar has gradually risen in terms of the standard of the individuals. So their preparedness has risen to stay with us. But many of them simply move on in their careers. By definition, they are very good at what they do, and better opportunities come. It's fantastic for them, and we should wish them all luck. We've been very busy with recruitment. I'm delighted to tell you, for example, that over the last few days, we have confirmed the recruitment of the new finance director, Brian Markison, who comes to you from Collar Capital, that many of you will know of, one of the leading private equity groups in the country. He was group finance director. Not only that, communally, he's, amongst other things, been the treasurer of the United Synagogue. Equally, in communal terms, we've broadened things because we've also confirmed the appointment of our new operations director, Judy Silkoff, who's going to be joining us as of the middle of November, and she was the operations director at the Federation. These are really high-powered people. We're lucky to have them, just as we're lucky to have a lot of people that are in the middle, as it were. And, for example, Lauren Kiles, I cannot tell you how high-powered that new appointment is. And that is yet another name to watch in coming years in terms of where she's going to be in the community as a leader. And I really hope that you're going to give her all the support that she deserves, as well as everyone else. And frankly, a very small minority of you continue to have a high-handed attitude towards the staff. You don't seem to get it. You cannot behave like that these days, number one. Number two, they're really good at what they do. Now, we are all aware that there are issues continually about deputy participation in a lot of our activities. And people ask questions about why sometimes members of staff do things and not HOs and not members of the executive, etc. It's simply actually that the board does more. We're not deaf to what people are saying about wanting to get more involved. We're trying to work that out. It's being discussed quite seriously, as is our commitment to the regions. Nothing that has been proposed recently has been kicked into touch, but things don't happen just because a committee wants it to, and things don't happen because we conjure these things. We have to articulate every single thing that we do with everything else. Sorry to sound a bit woolly, sorry to speak for so long. I'm just trying to get certain important things across. As ever, I want to thank the FNO members and the people who are not FNO members who help us with our working groups with what we're doing. And I hope to see lots of you at the dinner, and also a few of you are actually coming to the breakfast, which I'm pleased to say the first of our business breakfasts is a sellout. That's all for the time being. And I don't really feel that animated. I just wanted to speak quickly. Thank you.
I think you've got some more questions.
Janet Tresman, Deputy of the Finchley Progressive Synagogue. Stuart, we only got the invites on Friday. Why are you berating us today,
Sorry,
Sunday,
what are you talking about?
for the dinner?
Sorry, I'm not the dinner chairman, as you will be aware if you read the report.
But you said about signing
No, I'm
in.
simply encouraging you.
That
Those
we're
are invites.
Berating us is not encouragement.
Yes, but you haven't
And
come...
also,
Janet, you have been a deputy for a long time. Why haven't you come We've been asking you in writing for ages.
I got the
to come
invite
forward.
on Friday. I paid today. I hope everybody pays today and attends the dinner. Also, in terms of the what's it called, the levy for the deputies, this comes on our synagogue's invoice, and we get the invoice in November, and then we pay during the year.
Janet, the survey covers the fact that
Thanks,
not...
we'll move on. Thank you.
I'll
All
this.
I'm saying is that we don't always have, we don't pay and just send it in ad lib. We send it together on the invoice.
Janet, I'm sorry to cut
We can
into you.
stand up in our synagogues and give the reasons why we should support the board and why we should pay the levy. But please don't assume that everybody can just pay it in whatever way they want to do so. They can do it through their
I think it's
board.
a very valid point.
Thank you.
And everyone has done their best to get the invites out as quick as possible. But they're all valid points.
Hello, Anthony Adler for St Albans Mizorti Synagogue. So, as you might have noticed, I'm just a shade under 30. I presently earn a shade under £20,000 a year. So I do feel a little bit uncomfortable being told that I'm freeloading for not having spent £150 on dinner, as delicious as I hope it may be. More broadly, in my position, it is quite difficult
It's £75, by the way.
It is quite difficult to write to my peers asking for the same amount because it's slightly outside my experience. And this is a slightly broader point. If a lot of deputies wish to be more involved in the work of the board, and I think they do, and if we have a tremendous deal of expertise from the executive staff and indeed from other deputies, which I believe we do, I wonder whether it might be possible to organise either some resources so that when deputies are put in a position where they feel they need to take action, writing to MPs or other people, they have some guidelines on how best and most effectively to do that, and also perhaps some skill sharing workshops after sessions of the board, so we might share our experiences one with another of how to be more effective deputies. Thank you.
They're all good points. They're all good points. And you have to remember that the annual dinner is our main fundraising event of the year. I wish everybody would pay the £30 levy, but they don't. And to keep us here, we just have to raise money. And it's with the biggest regret that everybody can't come. But we have plenty of events during the year. But thank you for your points. They are well made.
Louisa Golden, Westminster Synagogue, and my first time asking a question, so bear with me.
You are very welcome, and thank you for speaking. I think that's very brave on your first time here, so welcome.
I haven't asked the question yet, so. Stuart, I know you've mentioned it kind of within your statement just there, but I am a little bit concerned about the high turnover of staff. My question is twofold. Firstly, around the retention of the current staff, what steps are being taken to make sure that they are staying? I know you said it's longer than normal, but I'm keen to understand that. And the second half is, you've got a lot of new staff joining. What is being done to make sure they're set up for success, given the large changes that are happening within the organisation?
Those are great questions. And happy to tell you that, for example, with the finance director and the operations director, I was a party to the handover process that's already taken place, and it was done to the highest professional standards, and we make every effort to maintain reasonable terms and conditions and pay levels for the existing members of staff, as well as to develop a friendly and collaborative and positive management culture. I think we're by and large successful in doing that. These are always concerns with an organisation that isn't in a position to pay top decile salaries, but people will move on. So those points are well made. To the previous question, I'm not aiming anything at people who do not have the means themselves to either buy a ticket for dinner or who do not know people who could come to the dinner, but I'm aware of a number of you who don't make that effort, and that's really who I'm directing it at. I'm not directing it at younger deputies or less well-off people, far from it.
Sorry, can I just add for staff, can I also say that a lot of young people, especially millennials today, they work for 5 years and they do move to get other experiences. It's not like perhaps some of us where we might have stayed in the same job for 20 years. And also it's up to us to be welcoming to our staff, for example, to Lauren. But we're very happy that our staff have gone on to get top positions. Joel Salmon's gone on to get a really good position, and he is going to have a lifelong connection with the board. And turnover isn't because people are unhappy, it's also because the board has given them the means to progress, and they become our friends in the future. And one of them, because of Brexit, feels very uncomfortable and doesn't know, where his position could be in this country. So that unfortunately can't be helped. So it's not negative necessarily that people are leaving, but we have got some very good people that are joining, and there's a lot of competition to want to come and work for the board, and people use it as a platform afterwards to get really, really good jobs and really benefit from their experiences. So I just wanted to add that, if you don't mind, Stuart.
Not at all. David.
David Farby, sorry, second time round, Finchley Reform. Promise won't do it again. Thank you very much for your report, Stuart, and I must say that as the Treasurer, you're a real treasure. We're very fortunate. But thank you for your reply about the staff. I think there's a certain amount still of confusion. I think it would help, once it's all settled down and got all these new people, if you could kindly produce an organisation chart that shows us who's at Kentish Town, because I think there's a bit of a gap between the deputies and what happens at Kentish Town, who's there, what their job titles are, what they do, and what the structure is. I think that would be very helpful if you could do that. And the second thing on your report is that you mention the annual report and accounts for 2018. I don't know that I've seen them, but never mind. It does say in the Constitution that that should be circulated to all the constituencies, and I know that the Treasurer of my shul would dearly like to see that, just to see where the money goes. So could you just confirm that that will be circulated to all the constituencies? Thank you very much again for your efforts.
I'm not used to saying yes. That's simply, but in answer to your first question, yes. And yes, I wasn't aware that it hadn't been circulated more generally or to your particular constituency. I'll look into it.
Can I just add, sorry again, we have had 2 open days for all the deputies to come and meet the staff, and we did ask today the Regional Council whether our staff could all come to meet them, and Paul has said that that can be considered for November. So we do want to make every opportunity for people to meet, and we will keep running open days from the board's offices as well. So thank you for that. Voting closes in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Ruth?
Okay. Ruth Friedman, Pinner United Synagogue. I'm responding really to Janet Traceman. Most of you, I hope, will remember that name, Ruth Friedman, because you should have received an email about the dinner several weeks ago, written personally by me to all of you. The only people who won't have had one are those who didn't give an email address. Now, I want to thank those who did reply to me. Some of them said, yes, thank you, I'll try and help you. Some of you said, I can't come to the dinner. Quite understood. Some of you just said, good luck with what you're trying to do. But the fact is, you had notification several weeks ago from me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
We've been told.
I have no more to say. I'll pass the mantle on to whoever's next.
Okay. I commend to you my Defence Division report. Since the report was produced, Joe Johnson, the Universities Minister, has been replaced by Chris Skidmore. We've already been in touch with him to congratulate him on getting his old job back. But we will be following up on the actions that we agreed with his predecessor, including on the points raised by both Brian Gedalia and Robert Jenrick earlier on the issue of Bristol University and the professor there. Secondly, with a general election likely, I don't know, I've been away for the last week, so it was difficult looking at the newspapers in a different time zone to know what was going on. But with the great possibility of a general election coming up, and although we don't know the date, we do know that it may take place over Sukkot. So please make sure that you as deputies are all registered to vote. You're shaking your head, Irene. We know that it may take place. It still could take place in October. It will be November. But please make sure. There you go. I missed that. Definite.
It's a long time in politics
Yes.
at the moment. In fact, a day is a long time.
Indeed. So please make sure that you are all registered to vote, and please make sure if there's any likelihood that you might not be able to vote in person, that you register for a postal vote. I've heard, and I continue to hear, that deputies want to be involved in the work that we're doing. And so with a general election likely in the next few months, this is your chance to be involved and to support the board's work. The role of the deputy is very clear. You are representing your local constituents, and at this point in time, it's your chance to get out and show and talk to your MPs and talk to all the candidates about the needs of your local community and to share with them the contents of the board's Jewish manifesto. You all had the chance to input into the updates to the Jewish manifesto, and that will be sent to all candidates at any point when a general election is announced. You can help us and help you to make a difference. Any input that you get from your intelligence as you go out and talk to local candidates and to your local MPs about the things that matter to us all, but the things that matter to you locally, and the feedback that you get is really important. It helps us at the board build up an overall picture of what's going on, and it helps us to address the issues. The possibility of a coalition government is quite likely, and therefore we need to understand locally the positions of all candidates on all the issues. If there's something that you just don't know what the answer might be, come talk to us before you meet with any of your local candidates. Ask for help. We have position papers and policy papers and information on many of the issues. I'm talking from a defence perspective, but I know my colleagues, the other HOs, will have issues as well. This is our chance to get our messages out there, and in areas where there's a high concentration of Jewish voters, the local MPs and the candidates will probably know the issues that we are interested in. But there are many candidates in many parts of the countries where they don't know the issues that we care about, and this is our chance to get those messages out. Make your voices heard. This is the time to do it. And whatever information you have, please make sure you feed that back. Thank you. Any questions?
Please come to the... Can you come to the microphone? We're due to finish at 1:25, and I want to do my closing remarks. Looks like I may have to limit the number of questions, particularly if you've spoken before.
Which I haven't. Ephraim Borowski, Scottish Council of Jewish Communities. I want to raise something. I want to ask about something that isn't in Amanda's report. Partly because I think it now falls between two stools. Inexplicably, the census seems to have moved from defence to community, but I don't mind who answers this. Are you aware that in the last week, the Scottish census authorities have put forward their proposals for the 2021 census? Their report draws attention to the fact that in the last census, 2011, 13% of people who identified as Jewish did so by writing Jewish in the ethnicity question. Taking the trouble to write, there wasn't a box to tick. They reckon that having an ethnicity question, an ethnicity answer coded for Jewish would add 27% to the size of the community. That was what this board agreed to lobby for 10 years ago, and I put it to you that we should do so again for the very obvious reason that I've just outlined.
I think we're going to have to take that one offline, and I know that Jerry Lewis had raised issues before on the census, and I haven't actually given time for Edwin's report, so I'm going to have to ask if you've got questions there. Can you all give your questions at the same time?
I really wanted to follow up what Ephraim had said. I wanted to deal with the same topic as Ephraim has dealt with.
Sorry?
Is that okay? Right. Spencer Nathan, Edgware United Synagogue. The voluntary religion question in the census was added after the ethnic question in both 2001 and 2011. If you analyse the findings, you'll find that the writings show that respondents have different characteristics. The ethnic question shows them to be more male, young, and less religiously committed. I was the longest serving member of the research unit before it transferred to the JPR. We worked well together, and if I were working for the JPR, I would be urging we only have a religion question so that we have strict comparability for time series data. But I'm a deputy, and we represent the whole Jewish community. President, we're not a backroom office of the JPR. At a time of heightened anti-Semitism, we need to represent all Jews and not just those with a religious commitment. Our enemies do not distinguish between religious and ethnic Jews. The proportion of people in the UK...
Red, thank you. Can I just say that I know that JPR are concerned with consistency because they like to compare the situation from the last census for the next one, and they like to look for the future, but it'll have to be taken offline. It's not something for the last 6 minutes of the board meeting today, but they're all serious questions. I'm really sorry, you're going to have to ask 2 very quick questions because actually I don't think we've got time. Are they very pressing questions?
A request, please. I am a regular contributor to an Islamic publication, and I think the work Sheila is doing in Azerbaijan should really get out to that community. It has a hardline circulation of 175,000 and a readership of nearly 3 million.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you, but we're doing defence questions now.
And also, you've spoken before. Would you mind?
Anthony,
we are
please,
out of time.
Please contact me separately.
Sorry. Edwin, thank you.
Okay. Our last division meeting this year is on the 30th of October, Wednesday at 5:15. We will have a by-election for more than one place early in the next year. Anyone who wishes to be part of our division would like to check it out, please come as an observer on the 30th of October see what we could do, see what you can do, and stand for the election in the early year. That's number one. Number two, I'd like to draw your attention to 3 programs on our flagship program of Invest in Peace. There are 3 of them this coming week. On Kingston on the 16th, Southampton on the 17th, Bournemouth on the 18th. Please go out of your way to support us. Anthony Silkoff meticulously planned every one, and we want to fill up every seat that there is today. This morning, the BBC Southampton gave us 6 minutes advertising this program, so the least we could do is to vote with you coming over and try and do the extra distance to come. And I will move my report, giving the time. If there's anyone have any questions, I'll be very happy.
One question, and then I'm moving on to the executive report and closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Gillian Moonman, Southport Hebrew Congregation. David Attenborough has called for creationism, which he refers to as pseudoscience, to be banned from classrooms under new rules. His comments were made with reference to Wales, when teachers will be given freedom over the curriculum in 2022. How will these new rules be applied to Jewish children in faith schools, and indeed to those of other faiths for whom creationism is a religious belief?
We will give a full answer in due course, but as of the initial reaction, we don't see this as an attack on teaching creationism in where the Jewish schools are teaching it at the moment, i.e. not a science subject. So what he was talking about is where they should be included in the science, and we didn't see any of our schools as yet has had any problems with David Attenborough's statement. I just want to say about the census, it would be a great idea if Mary would agree to a debate on that subject. That would be a very interesting one. I think many people here would love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comment on the executive report? Okay, thank you. We've had a very full meeting today, and we're very grateful to Rabbi Dweck, because he really gave us a heartwarming speech, and really reminding us how important it is that we are all Jews, wherever we're from, whatever affiliation we are, and that really resonated with me. I'm also very grateful for Robert Jenrick, Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, for his highly supportive speech, where he pledged his support to the Jewish community, and he outlined very clearly many of the concerns that the community are facing. We are very grateful for the £100,000 that he has put aside to tackle the online abuse, to challenge the huge number of anti-Semitic tropes and narratives that are harmful to the community. However, as I mentioned to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, when we went to see her, perhaps the time has come when the government cannot perhaps ignore the need for regulation, because does self-regulation work, particularly for many of the online forums? That is something that I think has to be looked at. I noted this week there was a report about the YouTuber known as Pewdiepie. Sorry if I've got his name wrong. He lives in Brighton, and he's got as many as 100 million followers, and many of these are children, and he'd been accused of making anti-Semitic jokes in his videos and evoking Nazi imagery. And the reports there were to do with the fact that he had offered to give $50,000 to ADL, and that now somehow had been withdrawn because that charity doesn't fit. But when you actually look at the impact of online abuse, where someone has got access, a media personality with 100 million followers, many of them children, online abuse is something that I feel has to be really taken further, and that is something of huge importance. And I would urge the government, perhaps whatever government we have after the general election, to really consider what further measures can be taken, because self-regulation on its own cannot stem the tide, not only just of anti-Semitism, but all forms of abuse. Thank you for your patience today. We have had a very long meeting and we've had lots of speakers, we've had lots of questions, so thank you very much. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you all a wonderful Rosh Hashanah, a happy new year. May your year be good and happy and full of new tidings. And just a reminder for the regional deputies, your meeting is now going to take place from 2 o'clock to 3:30, straight after this in the Hilton. So thank you all for your patience. Thank you. Thank you for coming.